The Institute of Internal Auditors presents the All Things Internal Audit AI podcast.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm here talking with Vince Walden from the CEO of konaAI. Vince, as we look forward to 2024, could you tell us what are some of the leading analytics trends internal auditors are thinking about to enhance their audit plans?
Thanks, Jeff, and so glad to be here. Some of those key trends are is put forth in this year's Coso Fraud Risk Management Guide, as well as some of the regulator guidance that the DOJ's put out. When you think about the use of data analytics, which is top of mind with internal auditors these days, now more than ever, especially when you think about generative AI, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the Coso Fraud Risk Management Guide is a must-read for internal auditors if you're thinking about considering fraud, risk, and controls, which of course we all do. That new guidance was updated from 2016 and is now out. I think it was released earlier this year. That's a definite must-read as you think about your governance, your risk assessment, your controls monitoring, your investigative and remediation process, and continuous improvement activities. There's analytics considerations, data visualizations, and text mining techniques and machine learning techniques that are described in that document that I think will really make an impact for internal auditors of all company sizes, not just large, but as well as mid and small companies.
For many auditors, breaking down the data silos to gain better insight can be a real challenge. How are you seeing internal auditors to help break down their data silos for use in their analysis?
You know, we all know as internal auditors, getting access to the data is one of the hardest challenges in the organization. From working with finance, working with IT, working with all sorts of parts, and dealing with data privacy issues and legal, etc. But I'll tell you, when you have that communication process down, it's so much more streamlined. So my advice for helping break down the silos is first, make sure you're invited to the parties. I've seen companies where they've deployed entire new IT third-party due diligence management systems where internal audit wasn't even invited to the party or wasn't aware. And there is so much risk insight questions that you can offer by being part of those corporate initiatives. So first part of breaking down the silos is making sure you're talking and getting out and talking to the business. And not being just reactive. And I think the internal audit profession has changed so much over the last 10 years, especially from being reactive in statutory audits to being 50% or more proactive in helping the business. Communicating and working with IT and having those relationships is key to breaking down the silos. And then the last point on that is start small. Don't boil the ocean. Don't try to grab 15 different ERP systems all at once. Start with your risk assessment. Show me the highest risk transactions or where we see the highest risk first. Start there. Get that data set. Don't make it too overwhelming. And then demonstrate the successes from your audit. Align your data plan with your audit plan. And then take it in bite-sized chunks. And that's, I think, one of the keys to getting buy-in from your stakeholders.
So you talk a lot about risk scoring, machine learning, and generative AI for use in continuous controls monitoring and fraud prevention and detection. Can you expand a bit more on those concepts?
Sure. As a writer for Fraud Magazine, which I know many internal auditors are also certified fraud examiners, I write regularly for Fraud Magazine, and I talk about machine learning, risk scoring, and this, what everybody's talking about now is generative AI. Let me just give you some practical examples to demystify it, because it's really not that hard, and it can really make an impact. When I think about machine learning, when I think about finding high-risk transactions, the people that can rip you off, the things that go wrong, can only happen between vendors, customers, and employees. If you think about it, that's it. Within your organization, that's where money moves. Vendors, customers, and employees. And when you can monitor transactions and find improper payments for whatever reason during your audits, if you have a way to tag them and track them. Most companies don't even tag what an improper payment looks like. Being able to tag them allows you to find more like this. And when I hear those words, find more like this, that is machine learning. What is the profile of an improper payment? What are the triggers? What risk triggers were they? What segregation of duties broke down? Making sure you capture that information so that when new transactions come in, you can statistically compare them against the known set of bad risk transactions. That's how you get effective machine learning. Second is risk scoring. Many internal auditors using traditional CATs, consumer computer assisted audit test, right? You only look at one test in a vacuum. That's not very effective. When I think about risk scoring, I take hundreds of tests through libraries. And again, there's lots of tests out there on the internet. You have probably tests in your library, but rather than focusing on one test, round dollars or duplicative payments or payments made before the invoice date or whatever the test that you might have, conflicts of interest tests, show me the transactions that hit on multiple tests, not just one. So I can take 250,000 invoices or payments and risk score them from 1 to 250,000, such that you better believe the top 10 riskiest transactions are those that are not only round dollar or duplicative or hitting on a sensitive keyword or didn't go through a due diligence. You have that transaction detail there so that you only need to look at the top 50 or maybe top 100 riskiest transactions than trying to rely on some random sample. Mm-hmm. Fraud detection and prevention never works with random sampling. You got to analyze 100% of the data, but risk score it. So you only need to look at the top 10 or top 25. It's a big game changer in reducing false positives and improving internal audit efficiency.
Okay.
Now, finally, I know this is a long answer.
That's great. Oh, keep it coming.
Machine learning. Let me tell you what the future holds. We all know generative AI, and we've all been seeing what people can do with ChatGPT and creating content and manuals. I'm not talking about that. You've also heard words like LLM, which is not a law degree. It's large language models, right? So ChatGPT went out and the LLM there is the internet, what they indexed. But what if you could point that chat technology, the generative AI, to your transactional data? So instead of pointing to the internet, let's point it to your accounting system and see what it does. Shockingly, it works quite well, and data doesn't have to leave the organization. My prediction in future, and mark me on this because I'm building it now, and you can bet others are too. Many of us are familiar with dashboards these days, Tableau, Power BI, Click. Many of you are using them in your internal audit work. How do you interact with them now? You click, right? Well, in the next 6 months to a year, you're going to be interacting with a chatbot. You can visit my website and see what that looks like on konaAI.com and how it works. But you're now going to be interacting with a chatbot that says, hey, I've identified risky transactions. What would you like to do? Oh, zoom in. Okay, click that. And the chatbot pushes Tableau or Power BI to zoom in and navigates you around in a controlled environment that is so easy to use. It's hard to code, let me tell you, but from an end user perspective, chatbots are awesome, and they make the experience interactive and prescriptive. It recommends things that you might want to do. It's going to be really exciting for internal auditors to see this type of technology evolve in the coming, I'll say, months, not years.
Wow. Okay. So Vince Walden has predicted the future, and you heard it here first, and we're supposed to keep him honest to it. We'll check back.
Yeah, check back with me.
But if your future is one in which you want to increase your analytics capabilities, Vince, tell them where they should begin.
I always say start with your risk assessment. There's no need, and I've said this in the past, don't boil the ocean. Focus on your risk assessment. What are your high-risk countries? What are your high-risk business units? Where can we start? And then focus on those risk items. Map those risk items to the data sources, not just one data source, but multiple data sources. The better the data sources you have, the more transparency you have into your analytics. So I always tell people, don't just do a accounts payable audit. Do a vendor risk audit, because that includes accounts payable, but it also includes the vendor master, what due diligence was done on the vendor, even external data. Are they check against sanctions and compliance lists? It's broader thinking. So start small, focus on your risk assessment, and then pick that area to do data analytics on that aligns with kind of the most value from how likely is it to occur and what's the impact, the good old heat map that we all know.
Okay, cool. Hey, Vince, thanks so much for sharing your
Jeff,
time with us today.
It's a pleasure.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you very much.
All right.